Hi everyone, I'm Shelly and you're watching There's No Place Like Home. I'm back with another Question the Narrative video, and today's topic is the earth will soon be destroyed. Before I even start this video, I just wanted to say that my prayers go out to everyone who is dealing with the wildfires right now, whether you are dealing with it directly or those who have loved ones that are affected. I just pray for all of your safety. This video is about 2 Peter 3:10 and 11, and what it seems to say about what is going to happen to the earth at what many people believe is the end of the world. So let's read what 2 Peter 3:10 to 11 says. The day of the Lord will come like a thief. The heavens will disappear with a roar. The elements will be destroyed by fire, and the earth and everything in it will be laid bare. Since everything will be destroyed in this way, what kind of people ought you to be? You ought to live holy and godly lives. And I just wanted to read that also to you in the English Standard Version. But the day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. The reason that I decided to do this video today is because many times when I talk about end times, people will say to me, well, we know that we are not on the new earth right now because in 2 Peter 3:10, it tells us that everything is going to burn up and be destroyed. And I will often allude to the fact that this is apocalyptic language being used, and this is not meant to be taken literally, but that there are not a lot of people who like to hear that. So first of all, before I even go any further, I just wanted to share with you this channel, The Bible Fulfilled, Alex Polyak. I have been reading his book, The End Is Here, and that is where I actually got the idea for this video. And I really, encourage you to get this book out, or not get this book out, to buy this book. Or I know that he has, you can get a preview of it if you go on his website. I haven't finished it yet, but it is so comprehensive and clear. That's what I always look for in books. Comprehensive and clear. That is exactly what this book is. And also his videos, they're absolutely amazing. And just like his book, they are comprehensive and clear. So definitely go over to his channel. But let me get started on this idea that the whole earth is going to be destroyed. First of all, let's tackle the whole earth aspect of it. Because what I have tried to argue in some of these videos, I don't even like to use the term argue, but what I've liked to share is that I firmly believe that this was a local event, this judgment. And what we will find is that if we go to the Old Testament, in Jeremiah 25, verses 30 to 31, it says, you therefore shall prophesy against them all these words, and say to them, the Lord will roar from on high, and from his holy habitation utter his voice. He will roar mightily against his fold, and shout like those who tread grapes, against all the inhabitants of the earth. The clamor will resound to the ends of the earth, for the Lord has an indictment against the nations. He is entering to judgment with all flesh, and the wicked he will put to the sword, declares the Lord. So there is a lot of very strong language that is used in this passage. We have all the inhabitants of the earth. Here it says all flesh. Certainly sounds like the flood, doesn't it also? And it is telling us he is entering into judgment with all flesh, and the clamor will resound to the ends of the earth. Is Jeremiah talking about the entire earth though in this passage? Well, if we just go a few verses earlier, it actually tells us who this is about. It says, this is starting in verse 17, and again, this is Jeremiah 25. So I took the cup from the Lord's hand and made all the nations to whom the Lord sent me drink it, Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, its kings and officials, to make them a desolation and a waste, a hissing and a curse, as at this day. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, his servants, his officials, all his people, and all the mixed tribes among them. all the kings of the land of Uz, and all the kings of the land of the Philistines, Ashkelon, Gaza, Ekron, and the remnant of Ashdod, Edom, Moab, and the sons of Ammon, all the kings of Tyre, all the kings of Sidon, and the kings of the coastland across the sea, Dedan, Tema, Buz, and all who cut the corners of their hair, all the kings of Arabia, and all the kings of the mixed tribes who dwell in the desert, all the kings of Zimri, and the kings of Elam, and all the kings of Media, all the kings of the north, far and near, one after another, and all the kingdoms of the world that are on the face of the earth. And after them the king of Babylon shall drink. So again, not only does it list a lot of nations, but it also tells you that it's all the kingdoms of the world that are on the face of the earth. So if you read through this and you see that it's against all the inhabitants of the earth, and it is an indictment against all the nations, and he's entering into judgment with all flesh, and you would think to yourself, wow, this whole world, there's not going to be anything left. The problem is that this actually was regarding the 586 BC judgment of Jerusalem. And well, or it may have been 600 BC actually, but it was the judgment of Jerusalem and various other nations. So while there were certainly a lot of nations involved in this, it was by no means the entire world that was judged at this time. Next, we have Ezekiel chapter 21, and I'm going to read verses 3 and 4. And tell her that this is what the Lord says: I am against you, and I will draw my sword from its sheath and cut off from you both the righteous and the wicked. Because I will cut off both the righteous and the wicked, my sword will be unsheathed against everyone from south to north. Everyone. And yet, this is actually referring to the 586 BC judgment of Jerusalem. Next, we have Zephaniah 1. Verses 14 to 18. This is also about the 586 BC judgment of Jerusalem. The great day of the Lord is near, near and hastening fast. The sound of the day of the Lord is bitter. The mighty man cries aloud there. A day of wrath is that day, a day of distress and anguish, a day of ruin and devastation, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of trumpet blast and battle cry against the fortified cities and against the lofty battlements. I will bring distress on mankind, so that they shall walk like the blind, because they have sinned against the Lord. Their blood shall be poured out like dust, and their flesh like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them on the day of the wrath of the Lord. In the fire of his jealousy, all the earth shall be consumed. For a full and sudden end he will make of all the inhabitants of the earth. Again, this passage is referring to the 586 BC judgment of Jerusalem, but here it is telling us all the earth shall be consumed. For a full and sudden end he will make of all the inhabitants of the earth. The biblical authors very often used hyperbole. It was very common in their culture to do this. So now it's time to go back to 2 Peter 3:10. Now that hopefully I've given you some examples of the world. It says the world is being judged when in fact it was specific local areas. And that is what I believe is happening also in the AD 70 judgment. But here in 2 Peter 3:10, it also talks about some really scary stuff. The day of the Lord will come like a thief, and then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done on it will be exposed. Just the other day, I had someone comment and say to me, how can you even try to say that we're on the new earth? Because have you looked out the window? Everything is still there. It hasn't all been burned up and destroyed. So how can you possibly think that the old earth has already passed away? Well, let's look at some examples in the Old Testament of the exact same language being used in the judgments of other nations. Isaiah 19:1 says, an oracle concerning Egypt. Behold, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud. I just have to point that out. The Lord is riding on a swift cloud. Remember, in Revelation and in Acts, it says that Jesus is coming. Well, actually, Acts doesn't say that he's coming with the clouds. He says that he will return in like manner. But people are expecting Jesus to return in clouds. Clouds are judgment language, and the Lord himself is said to have been riding in on clouds in the judgments of many nations in the Old Testament. So I just want to have to point that out, but let's just start over. An oracle concerning Egypt. Behold, the Lord is riding on a swift cloud and comes to Egypt, and the idols of Egypt will tremble at his presence, and the heart of the Egyptians will melt within them. Sounds pretty scary if you're taking it literally, but I think that this one at least is pretty obvious that it's not meant to be taken literally, especially if you're looking at the heart of the Egyptians melting within them. Although there might be some people who do think that you should take that literally, but it it clearly didn't happen that way. So in Isaiah 13, we have, behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel with wrath and fierce anger, to make the land a desolation and to destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light. The sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. I will punish the world for its evil and the wicked for their iniquity. I will put an end to the pomp of the arrogant and lay low the pompous pride of the ruthless. I will make people more rare than fine gold, and mankind than the gold of Ophir. Therefore, I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken out of its place at the wrath of the Lord of hosts in the day of his fierce anger. Sounds awfully familiar, doesn't it? It sounds like something that you would read straight out of Revelation about the end times judgment. And so you might be thinking, well, this is prophecy. It's in Isaiah, so it's possibly talking about that. Well, actually, verse 17 tells us who it was talking about. It says, Behold, I am stirring up the Medes against them, who have no regard for silver and do not delight in gold. So this was actually a prophecy about a judgment of Babylon that was fulfilled in 689 BC. And yet you see that same language. And so if all of this physically happened, I don't think that we'd be here today to talk about it. Let's read some more. Isaiah 34, verses 3 to 5. Their slain shall be cast out, and the stench of their corpses shall rise. The mountains shall flow with their blood. All the host of heaven shall rot away, and the skies roll up like a scroll. All their host shall fall, as leaves fall from the vine, like leaves falling from the fig tree. For my sword has drunk its fill in the heavens. Behold, it descends for judgment upon Edom, upon the people I have devoted to destruction. So now we have the prior one was about Edom being used as judgment against Babylon, but now we have Edom itself being judged. And how does it describe it? All the host of heaven shall rot away, and the skies roll up like a scroll. All their hosts shall fall as leaves from the vine, like leaves falling from the fig tree. This is the same language that we find in the end times prophecies. This is apocalyptic language. This is not literal because, again, if it happened this way, if the skies rolled up like a scroll during this time, and this was around 600 BC, we wouldn't be here to be talking about it. And I know that we read this passage in Zephaniah 1 earlier, but I'm going to read it to you again as we are looking at it in this manner as when it comes to apocalyptic language, because this passage is when when God used the Babylonians to judge Israel. And again, this was in 586 BC. The great day of the Lord is near, near and hastening fast. The sound of the day of the Lord is bitter. The mighty man cries aloud there. A day of wrath is that day, a day of distress and anguish, a day of ruin and devastation, a day of darkness and gloom, a day of clouds and thick darkness, a day of trumpet blast and battle cry against the fortified cities and against the lofty battlements. I will bring distress on mankind, so that they shall walk like the blind, because they have sinned against the Lord. Their blood shall be poured out like dust, and their flesh like dung. Neither their silver nor their gold shall be able to deliver them on the day of the wrath of the Lord. In the fire of his jealousy, all the earth shall be consumed. For a full and sudden end he will make of all the inhabitants of the earth. So here we have a passage, another passage, saying that the earth is going to be consumed by fire. But this was in 586 BC. Again, this was clearly not meant to be taken literally, or we would not be here to talk about it. Here we have Ezekiel chapter 32, and let's just read verse 1 to start. It says, in the 12th, actually, we'll read verses 1 and 2. In the 12th year, in the 12th month, on the first day of the month, the word of the Lord came to me. Son of man, raise a lamentation over Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and say to him. So what is that? That is telling us that this is about a judgment of Egypt. And this happened in approximately 580 BC. And I'm getting a lot of this information from this book by Alex Polyak, The End is Near, the one that I showed you earlier. Just felt like I had to say that again. But let's read what some of this says. Now, we're not going to read the whole thing. I will leave links if you want to come back and you can read it then. But let's just read verses 7 to 8 first. Remember, this is a judgment of Egypt that happened around 580 BC. When I blot you out, I will cover the heavens and make their stars dark. I will cover the sun with a cloud, and the moon shall not give its light. All the bright lights of heaven will I make dark over you, and put darkness on your land, declares the Lord God. So again, same language we are hearing in the end times prophecies. This is something that was common with the authors. And I try to explain that to people. People get very upset with me in the comments, and I try to explain to them that this was how the people of that time period wrote. They didn't think and write and communicate like we do. They illustrated things using pictures and lots of figurative language. And hopefully this is showing that to you. This what I just read to you, this was not a literal thing. Or I'm going to say it again. I'm going to say it many times in this video, or we wouldn't be here to talk about it. So, next we have Micah 1 verses 3 to 4. For behold, the Lord is coming out of his place, and will come down and tread upon the high places of the earth, and the mountains will melt under him, and the valleys will split open like wax before the fire, like waters poured down a steep place. Again, I know that a lot of you are going to say this is meltology. You know what? I'm going to say it's certainly possible, but this is talking about one specific place. This is talking about a judgment, not a judgment, I'm sorry, when Assyria took the 10 northern tribes of Israel captive. And this happened in about 721, between 721 and 712 BC. And this was one local area. Again, we're still talking about local areas here, but we still have the same type of earth-shattering apocalyptic language that is being used. I have one more example to share with you today, and this is Psalm 18, verses 7 through 17. And this is, here, I'll just show you. A psalm of David, the servant of the Lord, who addressed the words of this song to the Lord on the day when the Lord delivered him from the hand of all his enemies and from the hand of Saul. So that is the context of this. And how is this described? Then the earth reeled and rocked. The foundations also of the mountains trembled and quaked because he was angry. Smoke went up from his nostrils and devouring fire from his mouth. Glowing coals flamed forth from him. He bowed the heavens and came down. Thick darkness was under his feet. He rode on a cherub and flew. He came swiftly on the wings of the wind. He made darkness his covering, his canopy around him, thick clouds dark with water. Out of the brightness before him, hailstones and coals of fire broke through his clouds. The Lord also thundered in the heavens, and the Most High uttered his voice, hailstones and coals of fire. And he sent out his arrows and scattered them. He flashed forth lightnings and routed them. Then the channels of the sea were seen, and the foundations of the world were laid bare at your rebuke, O Lord, at the blast of the breath of your nostrils. He sent from on high. He took me. He drew me out of many waters. He rescued me from my strong enemy and from those who hated me, for they were too mighty for me. So here we have David using this figuratively, and we need to remember that the Psalms are poetry. And David was using apocalyptic language even in the Psalms. It was a figurative way to describe the strength and might and omnipotence of God. This was not something that physically, literally happened. So I'm hoping that I got through to some of you who are having a hard time with this, because I also just had someone talking to me, oh, well, it says that there's going to be a blood moon and there haven't been blood moons. And you just, if I answer you in the comments and I encourage you to read the Old Testament, if you are having questions about these literal things like in 2 Peter 3:10, or elsewhere in the Bible, even in Matthew 24, Revelation, of course, if I tell you to go back to the Old Testament to get the context for these things and to understand how these people thought and wrote, this is why all of these examples that I shared with you today, this is why. Because when you are reading the Bible, you need to read it from the perspective of the people who were living at the time that it was written. We need to remember that. Audience relevance is so important, and we do not understand things in the year 2024 in the same way that people in the year, for example, 53 AD understood things, or the way that people in the year, 600 BC understood things. We use hyperbole even in our own language. For example, and some examples of that Alex Polyak gives are, like, it's raining cats and dogs. I've told you 1,000 times not to run in the house. I've been waiting ages for you. And I died laughing, So those are great examples that he gave. And this is something that I really encourage you to think about. But that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one down below. And if you like my work and would like to support my channel, I will leave a link in the description for that as well, or you can just click on it right on my channel page. And I hope you have a great day.